Nearly a year ago, my dad told me they found my boyfriend's body while I was still wearing his hoodie, then broke down sobbing when I called them monsters. When I asked why he told me like that, he whispered, "Because you had to know." I left that day. But this morning, I found him quietly crying outside my door. I was in the middle of a math lesson, idly sending memes to my friends in our group chat, when the principal's voice crackled over the intercom. It was the familiar cue for a school-wide announcement. Attention to all students and faculty. Please do not leave your classrooms. Everyone must remain in their seats until we provide further notice. This is for your protection, as well as ours. Usually, the teacher's requests were ignored, but now the silence was so profound you could hear a pin drop. Even Mrs. Peterson froze, her chalk hovering mid-sentence above the blackboard. Then we heard the sirens. A symphony of ambulance wails blared outside, and she instructed us to stay calm in our seats. My classmates and I exchanged glances, our eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Nobody spoke, but a single thought was shared among us. A teacher had passed away. Red and blue lights danced across the walls, and the distant screams of students in other grades echoed down the hall. Mrs. Peterson tried to reassure us, saying it was a minor incident, and we should concentrate on our studies. But the words were strained, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. She was so terrified that she didn't even notice us taking out our phones, our fingers flying as we typed out our wild speculations into the group chat about what was happening. That's when we heard it. The sound of running feet, heavy and frantic, thudding past our door. A whole group of them. I couldn't resist. I crept to the door and peered through the small window. 2 paramedics sped past, pushing a gurney. The kind you see on medical dramas when someone's heart has stopped. "Get back from the door, Eve," Mrs. Peterson whispered, her voice trembling. She was just as terrified as we were. I returned to my desk and immediately began to text my friends what I had witnessed. The bitmojis in the group chat started flying, faster than a game of whack-a-mole. Maybe someone finally got rid of Mr. Jordan, the creepy history teacher, one friend suggested. No, it was probably an allergic reaction. Peanut allergies are no joke, another person chimed in. A third friend morbidly suggested someone had taken too much fentanyl. Mrs. Peterson attempted to resume the lesson, something about the Revolutionary War, but no one was listening. How could we care about a centuries-old battle when someone might be dying just down the hall? A knock on our door interrupted her. It was the principal, accompanied by a police officer. "Eve O'Brien," the principal announced. My heart sank. He was calling for me. "Can you come with us? Please bring your things." I got up silently and followed them, completely bewildered. In the hallway, I saw the paramedics near the gym. One sat on the floor, filling out paperwork. The stretcher was off to the side. When they led me to the office, I found my parents seated on the wooden chairs. This was especially confusing because they had been divorced since I was 7 and hadn't been in the same room together since. Suddenly, my mom stood up and rushed towards me, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry," she repeated over and over. I pushed her away gently. "Guys, it's okay. I mean, the teacher dying is awful, but My words were cut short by my father, the man who was the very image of stoicism and strength, as he broke down in sobs. "Honey, it wasn't a teacher," was the only phrase he could manage to get out. She then told me that my boyfriend, Alvin, was dead. I shoved her away. What kind of sick prank is this? I just saw him last night. Fury surged through me. I knew my parents had their issues, but I never thought they could be so cruel. Neither of them said a word in response, but their eyes were filled with a profound sorrow. My dad was the one to finally break the silence. His dad called him down for breakfast, honey. When he didn't come, they went to his room and found he wasn't there. Then they went to his attic, and the door wouldn't open. My dad paused, his voice cracking. It turns out, it was stuck on his body. He had committed suicide. My dad dissolved into tears once more. I pulled my vape from my pocket, not even caring that the principal was right there. I accused them of lying, remembering the screams and the stretcher. They then told me the intercom announcement was for me, but the school janitor had fallen and broken his hip, making him the immediate priority. I looked back at my mom and saw her entire body shaking, a sight I had never witnessed before. I muffled my scream with the sleeve of my hoodie, then collapsed to the ground. The sharp pain of my knees hitting the floor felt so grounding that I began to bang my head against the ground repeatedly. My parents picked me up and carried me to the back seat of the car, getting ready to drive me home. And that's when I got the text. It was from my own phone number, a video of me sleeping in my bed from the night before, but the camera was behind me. The phone slipped from my fingers, falling onto the car floor. My dad twisted around from the driver's seat, and my mom reached out for my hand. I couldn't breathe. Someone had been in my room. Someone had filmed me while I was sleeping. My mom picked up my phone, and her face went pale. She showed the screen to my dad, who instantly started the car and sped out of the school parking lot. I grabbed the phone back and watched the video again. It was definitely my room, with my purple comforter, my fairy lights on the wall. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., just a few hours before Alvin. I checked my messages, but the video was gone. The entire conversation with my own number had vanished. My hands shook as I frantically scrolled through my texts, but there was nothing. It was like it had never happened. My parents exchanged worried glances in the front seat. My dad kept checking the rearview mirror as my mom made a phone call, mentioning security cameras and changing the locks. The full horror of what was happening began to sink in. Someone had been in my house, in my bedroom, watching me sleep. We pulled into our driveway, and my dad did a full walk around of the house before letting us inside. My mom led me to the couch and began making me tea. I couldn't stop thinking about Alvin. Just last night, we had been texting about our plans for the weekend. He had sent me a funny TikTok at 11 p.m. How could he be gone? My dad came back from checking all the windows and doors. Everything was locked. No signs of forced entry. He sat down across from me, running his hands through his hair. My parents hadn't been in the same room together for this long since their divorce. The tension between them was thick, but their focus was entirely on me. I asked to go see Alvin's family. My mom gently shook her head, explaining that they were at the hospital handling everything. The word body hung unspoken in the air. I felt sick. This couldn't be real. People our age don't just do that, especially not Alvin. He was the happiest person I knew. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my own number. This time, a photo of Alvin's attic room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see his basketball shoes on the floor, the ones I had bought him for his birthday. The timestamp was from this morning, just before his family found him. I showed my parents, but again, when they looked at my phone, the message was gone. They exchanged another worried look. My mom suggested I might be in shock, imagining things. But I knew what I saw. Someone had also been in Alvin's room. Someone who wanted me to know they were there. My dad called the phone company to report the messages. They said it was impossible to receive texts from your own number. He argued with them for 20 minutes while my mom rubbed my back. I couldn't cry. I couldn't feel anything except a growing sense of dread. The doorbell rang, making all of us jump. My dad looked through the peephole before opening it. Alvin's older brother, Marcus, stood there, his eyes red. He asked if he could talk to me. My parents hesitated, but eventually let him in. Marcus sat down next to me on the couch. He looked shattered. He kept trying to speak, but couldn't find the words. Finally, he pulled out his phone and showed me a text from Alvin's number, sent an hour ago. It was a video of me walking into school this morning. My blood ran cold. Alvin's phone was with the police. Marcus said the police had taken it as evidence, but somehow someone was still using it. The video on Marcus's phone disappeared just like mine had. My mom called the police to report the harassment. They said they would send someone over to take a statement. While we waited, I tried to piece together what was happening. Someone had been in both of our rooms. Someone with access to our phones, our homes. Someone who wanted me to know they were watching. The police officer arrived and took notes about the strange messages. He seemed doubtful when we couldn't show him any evidence. The messages had all vanished. He suggested it might be a grief response, that sometimes trauma could cause people to imagine things. I wanted to yell at him that I wasn't crazy, but I just sat there, feeling helpless. After the officer left, my parents discussed sleeping arrangements. Neither wanted to leave me alone. They decided my dad would sleep on the couch while my mom stayed in the guest room. For the first time since their divorce, we would all be under the same roof. I went upstairs, my dad following close behind. He checked under the bed, in the closet, behind the curtains. Everything looked normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. I noticed my jewelry box had been moved slightly, and the curtain was drawn back differently than I'd left it, even though the window was locked. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a video of Alvin and me in his car last week after school, laughing. I didn't remember anyone filming us. The angle was from outside the car, through the passenger window where I was sitting. This time, I didn't show my parents. They already thought I was losing my mind. I tried to save the video to my photos before it could vanish, but when I checked, my photo gallery was empty. Every picture, every video was gone. Years of memories with Alvin, with my friends and family, all erased. I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow looked like a person. I kept thinking about Alvin in his attic room. He loved that space, decorated with posters of his favorite basketball players and colorful LED lights. We had spent so many afternoons up there, talking about college and our future. My phone lit up with another message. This one was different. It was just text. You should have stayed away from him. Before I could screenshot it, it vanished. I sat up, my heart pounding. Someone had been watching us, and they didn't want me with Alvin. But who and why? Alvin didn't have enemies. He was the kind of guy who helped freshmen find their classes and volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. I crept downstairs, where my dad was scrolling through his phone on the couch. I told him about the text. He immediately wanted to go back to the police, but I convinced him to wait until morning. What would we tell them? That I was receiving invisible, threatening messages? We sat together in the dark living room. My dad asked me if Alvin had been acting differently. I thought back over the past few weeks. He had seemed a little distracted, checking his phone more often. He had canceled a few dates, saying he had family stuff to do, but I hadn't thought much of it then. My mom came downstairs, unable to sleep either. The three of us sat there, speechless. It felt like a twisted family reunion. Both of them kept checking their phones, probably looking up security systems and therapists. I thought about the video of me sleeping. Whoever took it had been standing right next to my bed, close enough to touch me. The thought made my skin crawl. How many other nights had they been there? How long had this been going on? My phone buzzed once more. This time, a photo of Alvin's funeral announcement, even though the funeral hadn't been planned yet. His family was still at the hospital. The date on the announcement was for 3 days from now. The location was his family's church. And at the bottom, in tiny print, it said, "You're next." This time I screamed. My parents rushed over, and I showed them the phone, but once again, the message was gone. They held me as I finally broke down, sobbing about everything. Alvin was gone. Someone was stalking me, and now they were threatening to kill me, too. My dad called 911 while my mom held me tight. This time, I didn't care if the police thought I was crazy. Someone had killed Alvin. I was sure of it. This wasn't suicide. Someone had been watching us, planning this, and now they were coming for me. As we waited for the police to arrive again, I thought about all the signs I had missed. The feeling of being watched when Alvin and I were together. The way he had been jumpy lately, always looking over his shoulder. The new locks his parents had installed on their doors the month before. He had said it was because of break-ins in the neighborhood, but now I wondered. The police arrived with more officers this time. They took my phone as evidence and said they'd have their tech team try to recover the deleted messages. They also promised to re-examine Alvin's death for signs of foul play. One detective gave me his card and told me to call immediately if anything else happened. My parents decided we couldn't stay at the house. We packed bags and drove to my aunt's house, an hour away. During the drive, I stared out the window, thinking about Alvin, his smile, his laugh, the way he would hold my hand when I was anxious. Gone. All of it gone. At my aunt's house, I finally felt exhausted enough to sleep. My mom stayed in the room with me, sitting in a chair by the door. As I drifted off, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was doing this was not finished. They had taken Alvin from me. They had invaded my home and my sense of safety. But why? What did they want? And how did they know so much about us? The questions swirled in my mind as sleep finally took over. Tomorrow, I would have to face a world without Alvin. Tomorrow, I would have to figure out who was doing this. Tonight, though, I just needed to survive. I woke up suddenly to my mom shaking my shoulder. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains. My phone was on the nightstand, and I grabbed it immediately, checking for more messages. Nothing. The police had it for most of the night, returning it only after their tech team found no trace of the vanishing texts. My aunt had made breakfast, but I couldn't eat. Every bite felt like sawdust. My parents sat across from me, with dark circles under their eyes. They had been up all night making phone calls, trying to arrange for better security at our house. My dad mentioned installing cameras and new locks. My mom talked about maybe staying with relatives for a while. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, where I splashed cold water on my face. In the mirror, I looked like a ghost. Pale skin, hollow eyes, tangled hair. I thought about Alvin seeing me like this and almost smiled before remembering he would never see me again. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Another message from my own number. This time, it was a screenshot of text between Alvin and an unrecognized number. The messages were from 2 weeks ago. Alvin was telling this person to leave him alone, that he didn't want to meet up anymore. The other person's responses were desperate, pleading, then threatening. I tried to take a screenshot, but my phone screen went black. When it came back on, the message was gone. But I had seen enough. Someone had been harassing Alvin before he died. Someone he knew. Someone who might have pushed him to. No. I was becoming more certain by the hour that Alvin had not done this to himself. I rushed back to show my parents, but they were in a deep conversation with my aunt about funeral arrangements. Alvin's family had asked if I wanted to speak at the service. The thought made me sick. What would I even say? That I thought someone had murdered him? That we were both being stalked? My mom noticed my distress and came over. I tried to explain about the new message, about the text showing someone threatening Alvin. She listened patiently, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Not worry about a stalker, but worry about me. She thought I was having a breakdown. My dad suggested we go for a drive just to get some fresh air. We got into his car and drove through my aunt's quiet neighborhood. Everything looked so normal. Kids playing in yards, people walking their dogs. How could the world keep spinning when mine had stopped? We ended up at a small park where my dad used to take me as a kid. He bought me an ice cream from a truck, probably hoping it would make me feel better. We sat on a bench and watched ducks swim in the pond. Neither of my parents brought up the messages or Alvin. They were trying to give me space to grieve. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo of me, sitting on this exact bench, taken from behind a tree about 50 feet away. The timestamp showed it was from 30 seconds ago. I jumped up, spinning around, searching for whoever was watching us. My parents leaped up, too, alarmed by my reaction. I showed them the phone, but again, nothing was there. My dad's face hardened. He no longer thought I was crazy. He grabbed my hand and my mom's arm, guiding us quickly back to the car. We drove straight to the police station. My dad marched inside, demanding to speak with the detective from last night. After a long wait, Detective McNicholas came out, looking tired and skeptical. My dad explained about the photo at the park, how someone was clearly following us. The detective took notes, but pointed out the obvious problem. Without evidence, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested we file a restraining order, but against whom? We didn't know who was doing this. He promised to have patrol cars drive by my aunt's house periodically. On the drive back, my mom called Alvin's mother. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but it sounded like they were discussing the funeral arrangements. When she hung up, she told me that Alvin's family wanted to see me. They had some of his things they thought I might want. We drove to Alvin's house, my stomach twisting the entire way. His mom answered the door, her eyes red and puffy. She hugged me tight, both of us crying. His dad stood in the background, looking lost. Marcus was there, too, sitting on the couch and staring into space. Alvin's mom led me up to his room. Everything was exactly as he had left it. His basketball jersey thrown over his desk chair, his laptop open on his bed, the book he had been reading for English class bookmarked halfway through. It was as if he might walk in at any second. She handed me a box with some of our photos, the hoodie I always borrowed, and a few other small things. Then she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. She said they had found Alvin's journal hidden in his closet. He had been writing about feeling watched, about strange things happening, messages disappearing from his phone, items being moved in his room. I asked to see the journal, but she said the police had taken it as evidence. They were beginning to take the situation more seriously, especially after finding similar complaints from Alvin going back weeks. He had never told me any of this. He had been trying to protect me. Or perhaps he had thought he was going crazy, too. Marcus appeared in the doorway. He mentioned that Alvin had been getting strange phone calls late at night. Sometimes the caller would just breathe into the phone. Other times, they would whisper things Marcus couldn't make out. Alvin had changed his number twice, but the calls had kept coming. We stayed for another hour, sharing memories and crying together. As we were leaving, Alvin's mom pulled me aside. She whispered that she didn't believe Alvin had taken his own life. A mother knows her child, she said. He had been scared, but not depressed. He had been planning to tell her something important the morning he died. The drive back to my aunt's house felt heavy with new information. Alvin had been going through the same thing I was now experiencing. Someone had been tormenting him for weeks, maybe months. And now that he was gone, they had turned their attention to me. My phone had been quiet for hours, which somehow felt more ominous than the constant messages. My parents decided we should go back to our house to pack more clothes and essentials. They didn't want to stay there, but we needed things for the funeral and beyond. The house felt different when we walked in. Nothing was out of place, but a wrongness hung in the air. My dad went room to room, checking windows and locks. My mom helped me pack a suitcase. I grabbed my laptop, some clothes, and a few personal items. In my room, I noticed something odd. My diary, which I kept hidden under my mattress, was on my nightstand. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I opened it to find a new entry written in a handwriting that looked almost like mine, but not quite. It was dated yesterday, after we had left for my aunt's house. The entry described feelings I had never had, thoughts about Alvin that were twisted and wrong. It painted me as obsessed, possessive, and angry that he had been pulling away. The final line made my hands shake. Maybe if I can't have him, no one can. I showed my parents immediately. This time, we had physical evidence. My dad carefully placed the diary in a plastic bag, trying not to smudge any fingerprints. My mom called Detective McNicholas directly. He agreed to meet us at the station right away. The detective studied the diary entry carefully. He admitted this changed things. Someone had broken into our house and was trying to frame me. He asked if I had any idea who might want to hurt me or Alvin. I couldn't think of anyone. He kept the diary as evidence and promised to have the handwriting analyzed. He also said they would be re-interviewing everyone who knew Alvin, looking for anyone who might have had access to both of our houses. The investigation was officially expanding beyond a simple suicide case. We returned to my aunt's house as evening fell. I felt exhausted but couldn't relax. Every car that drove by made me tense. Every notification on my phone made my heart race. My parents took turns staying awake, watching the doors and windows. I tried to think about who could be doing this. It had to be someone who knew us both well. Someone with access to our homes, our routines, and our phones somehow. The messages from my own number suggested some kind of technical knowledge. But who in our circle had those skills? My phone buzzed. Another message from my number. This time, with a video. It showed Alvin in his attic room the night he died. He was alone, pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. Then someone else entered the frame. The video cut off just as Alvin turned to face them. I screamed for my parents. This was it. Proof that someone else was there when Alvin died. But when they reached me, my phone was dead. Completely black. It wouldn't turn on. My dad tried everything, but it was as if the battery had been completely drained. We drove back to the police station immediately. Detective McNicholas wasn't there, but another officer took our statement. He bagged my phone as evidence and said their tech team would try to recover the video. He also mentioned they had found something interesting in Alvin's journal. According to the journal, Alvin had been receiving gifts. Small things left in his locker, on his car, in his room. Nothing threatening at first, just little tokens of affection. But they had gotten stranger over time. Photos of him taken without his knowledge. Locks of hair that weren't his. A vial of what looked like blood. The officer said they were now treating this as a stalking case that had escalated to murder. They had a few suspects they were looking into. People who had been close to Alvin. He couldn't share names, but said they would know more after conducting interviews tomorrow. We returned to my aunt's house, feeling both hopeful and terrified. Finally, the police were taking this seriously, but it also confirmed my worst fears. Alvin had been murdered by someone who had been obsessed with him, and now that same person was after me. That night, I borrowed my mom's phone to check social media. I needed to feel connected to something normal. But when I logged into my accounts, I found dozens of messages from friends. They were all asking about posts I had supposedly made, posts about Alvin that I had never written. I checked my profiles. Someone had been posting as me for days. Crazy, rambling messages about love, loss, and revenge, photos of Alvin I didn't even have, and status updates that made me sound unhinged. All my friends thought I was having a mental breakdown. I tried to delete the posts, but my passwords had been changed. Every account was locked. My digital life had been hijacked just like everything else. I threw my mom's phone across the room in frustration, immediately regretting it when the screen cracked. My parents found me sobbing on the floor. They held me while I explained about the social media posts. My dad said we would deal with it tomorrow, that we would contact the platforms and explain the situation. But I knew the damage was done. Everyone at school would think I had lost my mind. Sleep felt impossible, but exhaustion eventually won. I dozed fitfully, waking every hour to check that my mom was still in the chair by the door. Sometime around 3 a.m., I heard a noise outside, a soft tapping, like someone throwing pebbles at the window. I woke my mom, and we crept to the window together. Down in my aunt's garden, a figure stood in the shadows. They were holding something up, trying to get my attention. When a car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminated them. It was someone in a hoodie, their face obscured, but their height and build looked familiar. My mom called 911 while I watched the figure. They didn't run when they heard her on the phone. Instead, they calmly placed something on the ground and walked away. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. The officer retrieved what they had left behind. It was a teddy bear, the one Alvin had won for me at the carnival last summer. The bear had been in Alvin's room. I had seen it on his bed when his mom showed me around. Someone had taken it and brought it here. Someone who had access to his house even after his death. The officer bagged it as evidence and promised to dust it for fingerprints. Morning came too soon. The funeral was tomorrow, and I had nothing to wear. My mom offered to go shopping with me, but I couldn't face them all. Instead, my aunt lent me a black dress that fit well enough. I spent the day helping Alvin's family with last-minute arrangements, trying to stay busy. Marcus pulled me aside at one point. He had been doing his own investigation, going through Alvin's computer and phone records. He had found something the police had missed. Alvin had been chatting with someone online, someone who claimed to go to our school but used a fake name. The conversations had started friendly enough. This person claimed to need help with homework, then gradually became more personal. They knew things about Alvin that he had never shared online. Details about his daily routine, his family, his relationship with me. Alvin had grown suspicious and tried to end the conversations. That's when the messages turned dark. The person accused Alvin of leading them on, of being cruel. They said they had been watching him for months, that they knew everything about him. The final message sent the night before Alvin died simply said, "You'll be sorry." Marcus had printed out all the conversations. We spread them on his bedroom floor, looking for clues about who this person might be. The language was careful, gender-neutral, but certain phrases stood out, ways of speaking that felt familiar, but I couldn't quite place them. My borrowed phone rang. It was Detective McNicholas. They had made an arrest. Someone had been caught trying to break into my house again. They were being questioned now, and he wanted me to come to the station. My parents and I rushed over, hope and fear battling in my chest. At the station, the detective led us to a small room with a one-way mirror. He explained that the suspect had been caught with a key to my house, along with photos of me and Alvin. They were refusing to talk without a lawyer, but the evidence was mounting. I pressed against the glass, trying to see who had been tormenting us. When they brought the suspect in, my heart stopped. I knew that face. We all did, but it didn't make sense. This person had no reason to hurt us, or so I had thought. The detective watched my reaction carefully. He asked if I recognized them. I nodded, unable to speak. He said they had found more evidence at the suspect's home. Hundreds of photos of Alvin, videos taken through windows, a shrine hidden in their closet, and journals detailing an obsession that went back over a year. Everything started clicking into place. The access to our homes, the knowledge of our routines, the technical ability to send those untraceable messages. It had been right in front of us the whole time. Someone we trusted, someone we had never suspected. The detective said they had found evidence linking the suspect to Alvin's death. Fingerprints in his room that shouldn't have been there. Security footage from a neighbor showing them near his house that night. Text messages on a burner phone planning the whole thing. I thought I would feel relief knowing who it was. Instead, I felt sick. This person had smiled at us, talked to us, and pretended to be normal while planning something horrible. They had killed Alvin because he had rejected their advances, and they had come after me because I was in the way. The suspect's lawyer arrived and immediately shut down any questioning, but it didn't matter. The police had enough evidence to hold them. Detective McNicholas said they would be charged with murder, stalking, breaking and entering, and harassment. The case was solid. We left the station in a daze. Tomorrow, we would bury Alvin, knowing who had taken him from us. It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. Nothing would bring him back. Nothing would erase the terror of the past few days. And I still had to face everyone at the funeral, knowing they had all seen those fake social media posts. That night, for the first time since this started, no messages came. My phone stayed quiet. No one appeared in the garden. The house felt almost peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The suspect had been obsessed for over a year. Did obsessions like that just end with an arrest? I helped my parents write a statement for the police about everything we had experienced. The vanishing messages, the break-ins, the stalking, every detail that might help the case. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. The funeral was in 8 hours. I lay in bed, thinking about Alvin, about how he had tried to protect me by not telling me about the stalking, about how scared he must have been in those final moments, about how I would never get to tell him I loved him one more time. The tears came then, and they didn't stop until dawn. The funeral arrived like a punch to the gut. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my aunt's black dress while my parents waited downstairs. My hands trembled as I applied mascara, knowing it would just run down my face anyway. The police had called that morning with updates. The suspect remained in custody, but their lawyer was already working angles. At the church, hundreds of people filled the pews. Teachers, classmates, and family members I hadn't seen in years were there. Alvin's parents sat in the front row, his mom clutching tissues while his dad stared straight ahead. Marcus had saved a spot for me with their family. The gesture made my throat tight. During the service, I kept glancing around, paranoid that someone else might be involved. The detective had mentioned they were still investigating whether the suspect had help. My phone stayed mercifully quiet in my purse. No mysterious messages, no vanishing videos, just silence that felt wrong after days of torment. When they called me up to speak, my legs felt like jelly. I had written something the night before, but the words blurred on the paper. Instead, I talked about Alvin's terrible jokes, how he would practice free throws until his hands were raw, and the way he would sneak extra food to the stray cats behind the school. People laughed through their tears. It felt like the first normal moment in days. After the service, Alvin's extended family gathered at their house. His aunts had prepared enough food to feed an army. I helped Marcus set up chairs in the backyard while our parents handled the kitchen. Working kept my mind busy, stopped me from dwelling on who wasn't there. The empty space where Alvin should have been, cracking inappropriate jokes to lighten the mood. Detective McNicholas appeared at the gathering, dressed in civilian clothes, but still obviously a cop. He pulled my parents and me aside near the garage. The suspect had finally talked. Not a full confession, but enough. They had been obsessed with Alvin since freshman year, creating elaborate fantasies about their future together. When Alvin started dating me, the fantasies turned dark. The detective explained how they had gained access to our homes, copied keys during study sessions, learned our schedules, and installed spyware on our phones through seemingly innocent app recommendations. The technical knowledge came from online forums and YouTube tutorials. Nothing sophisticated, just persistent. The vanishing messages used a simple remote access program. What chilled me most was learning about the escalation. For months, they had been content to watch, to collect photos and videos. But when Alvin tried to distance himself, recognizing something was off, they had panicked. The night he died, they had confronted him in his room. The detective wouldn't give details, but the evidence suggested Alvin had fought back before being overpowered. My dad's fists clenched as the detective spoke. My mom gripped my hand so tight it hurt. We had trusted this person, invited them into our homes, shared meals and memories. The betrayal stung almost as much as the loss. The detective left us with reassurances about the strength of the case. Multiple charges would ensure significant prison time. He gave us his direct number, promising to keep us updated as things progressed. My parents thanked him while I stood there feeling numb. Back among the mourners, I noticed people whispering, glancing my way. Word had spread about the arrest, though most didn't know the details. Some offered condolences mixed with curiosity. Others kept their distance, unsure how to act around the girl whose boyfriend had been murdered by someone we all knew. Alvin's mom found me hiding in the kitchen. She pulled me into a fierce hug, both of us shaking. She whispered that she was grateful for the truth, that knowing helped somehow. His dad joined us, wrapping his arms around both of us. We stood there crying while party sounds drifted in from outside. Marcus drove me home that evening, my parents following in their car. He had barely spoken all day, processing his own grief and anger. At a red light, he finally broke his silence. He had been going through more of Alvin's things and found a letter addressed to me. Alvin had written it the week before he died, but never sent it. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. Alvin's messy handwriting covered the page. He wrote about feeling watched, about strange things happening, but mostly he wrote about us, about how he had wanted to protect me from whatever was going on, how he had planned to go to the police but wanted proof first. The last line destroyed me. If something happens, know that loving you was worth everything. Marcus pulled over as I sobbed. He cried too. Both of us mourning the brother and boyfriend who had tried so hard to shield others from danger. My parents caught up, concerned about why we had stopped. I showed them the letter and watched my dad's face crumble. That night, we stayed at our own house for the first time since everything started. New locks gleamed on every door. Security cameras blinked at every entrance. My dad had installed a system that would alert our phones if anyone approached. It felt like living in a fortress. I sat in my room, surrounded by photos of Alvin and me that I had printed from backup drives. My social media accounts were slowly being recovered with help from the platform security teams. Friends had started reaching out, apologizing for believing the fake posts. I didn't blame them. The impersonation had been convincing. My mom knocked and entered with hot chocolate, sitting on my bed like she used to when I was little. We talked about the future, about healing, about how to move forward. She mentioned a grief counselor who specialized in trauma. I agreed to try it, knowing Alvin would want me to take care of myself. The next few days blurred together. Police interviews, meetings with prosecutors, and sessions with lawyers. The case was building steadily. They had found more evidence at the suspect's home, including detailed plans about isolating Alvin from friends and family. The obsession ran deeper than anyone had realized. I returned to school a week later. Walking those halls felt surreal. Everything looked the same, but it felt completely different. Mrs. Peterson hugged me when I entered her classroom, tears in her eyes. She had arranged for me to make up missed work at my own pace. My friends formed a protective bubble around me. They walked me between classes, sat with me at lunch, and made sure I was never alone. The whispers and stares from other students stung, but my crew kept them at bay. Even people who had never talked to me before offered condolences. Marcus started picking me up after school. He said it helped him feel connected to Alvin, but I think he was protecting me, too. We would drive around talking about his brother, sharing stories that made us laugh and cry. He became like the older brother I had never had. One afternoon, while organizing Alvin's memorial scholarship fund with his parents, my phone rang. The prosecutor wanted to meet. The suspect's lawyer was pushing for a deal. They wanted to avoid a trial by pleading guilty to lesser charges. The thought of them getting off easy made my stomach turn. My parents and I met with the prosecutor the next day. She laid out the options. A trial would mean reliving everything and testifying in detail about the stalking and harassment, but it would also mean the possibility of a maximum sentence. A plea deal would guarantee prison time, but less than they deserved. We discussed it for hours. Alvin's parents joined us. Everyone weighed the emotional cost of a trial against the need for justice. In the end, we agreed to reject the plea deal. Alvin deserved the full truth to be heard. We all deserved to see justice served properly. The suspect's family tried reaching out through intermediaries. They wanted to apologize, to explain, to somehow make amends. We refused all contact. There was nothing they could say that would bring Alvin back or undo the trauma they had caused. I threw myself into planning the scholarship fund. We organized fundraisers at school, car washes, and bake sales. The community rallied around Alvin's memory. Local businesses donated prizes for raffles. His basketball team held a memorial game that packed the gym. 3 months after Alvin's death, I stood in his attic room with his parents. We were finally ready to pack up his things. Each item held memories. The basketball he had been practicing with that last week, the college brochures he had been studying, the photo of us at junior prom tucked into his mirror. Marcus found Alvin's journal from middle school, full of dreams about making varsity and dating his crush. We laughed at his 13-year-old self's predictions about the future. He had written about wanting to help kids learn basketball, to have a family, to travel somewhere with mountains. As we packed, I felt Alvin's presence differently. Not the sharp pain of loss, but something softer. He had lived fully in his short time. He had been loved and had loved deeply. The person who had taken him had stolen his future, but they couldn't steal what he had already given us. The trial date was set for 6 months out. I would have to testify, to relive those terrifying days of messages and stalking. But I felt ready. My parents, Alvin's family, and our friends all promised to be there. We would face it together. I started volunteering at the animal shelter where Alvin had worked. The cats remembered me from when I had visited him there. Working with the animals felt therapeutic, a connection to happier times. The shelter director mentioned that Alvin had been their best volunteer, always patient with the difficult cases. My grades slowly improved as I found a new routine. Therapy helped process the trauma and grief. Some days were harder than others. Certain songs, smells, or places would trigger waves of sadness, but I learned to ride them out, to honor the pain without drowning in it. The scholarship fund's first recipient was announced at graduation, a freshman who showed promise in basketball and academics, just like Alvin had. Watching them receive the award, seeing Alvin's name live on through helping others, felt like a small victory against the darkness. I decided to attend the local college, staying close to my family and support systems. My parents had grown closer through the ordeal, not reconciling, but finding a friendship they had lost. We had regular dinners together, a new tradition born from tragedy. On the anniversary of Alvin's death, we held a memorial at the park where he taught kids basketball. Hundreds showed up. Former teammates shared stories. Kids he had coached demonstrated moves he had taught them. His parents unveiled a bench with a plaque bearing his name. I spoke about how Alvin had lived without fear, how he had faced danger trying to protect others, how his love had been stronger than someone's obsession, how we honored him by living fully, by helping others, by choosing love over fear every day. The suspect was convicted on all charges, 25 years to life. It didn't bring Alvin back, but it meant they couldn't hurt anyone else. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift. Justice had been served. The legal chapter was closed. I kept the letter Alvin had written me in my wallet. On hard days, I would read his words about love being worth everything. He was right. Despite the pain, the fear, and the loss, loving him had been worth it. He had changed me, made me stronger, and taught me that some things are worth fighting for. Life moved forward. I made new friends at college, studied hard, and even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. The scholarship fund grew, helping more students each year. Alvin's parents became like second parents to me, our shared loss creating an unbreakable bond. Sometimes I would catch myself looking for him in crowds, expecting to see his smile or hear his laugh. The grief never fully disappeared, but it became a part of me. But so did his love, his strength, and his joy. The person who had tried to destroy all that had failed.